HiddenTreasures, StockPulse.com production. This in-depth drill down conducted by Allan Berry from the Allan Berry Reports. He's with Kelly Malcolm, VPX of Amex Exploration, talking their 100% owned Perrin Gold project in Quebec.
Hello, everybody. It's Allan Berry Laboucan here from the Allan Berry Reports and StockPulse.com. We've got a very exciting company for you today. Amex Exploration is a company that I've been following for about a year now, and they've got a tremendously good exploration project for high-grade gold in Quebec. And today we've got Kelly Malcolm, who's the VP Exploration, on to tell us about that. How are you doing today, Kelly?
Doing very well, thanks. Excited about the grilling, Allan.
Well, I won't put you under too much heat there, Kelly. What I think we should do, Kelly, is why don't you start from the start? We'll go into the who, what, where, when, and whys. And why don't you go to the start of why you guys acquired this the project, and then we'll lead towards where we are today and going forward, and I'll pop in for a few questions every once in a while.
Sure. So this is kind of an atypical exploration project in that we've had it in the company's hands since 1996. It was optioned on the backs of a gold discovery made on what we're calling now the Gretienne Gold Zone. So we picked it up then. We've had it in good standing ever since. It's been sitting on the shelf with sporadic periods of work applied to it. So in the 90s, there was a small work program done. In about 2008, there was another drilling program done. And then in 2013, we had some flow through in the company, drilled a few holes, and intercepted a pretty interesting zone of semi-massive to disseminated stringer sulfides that looked very similar to Agnico Eagle's La Ronde mine.
And where is that in relation to Perrin?
That's right smack dab in the center. We call it actually the Central Polymetallic Zone. So that was 2013, I believe hole 2013-03. Within about 2 months after that discovery hole, we actually signed an option deal with Agnico. And that deal stipulated they had to spend $4 million over 4 years in order to earn 51% in the project. So from 2013 through to June of 2017, they spent around $3 million, ended up returning the project back to us in June of 2017 without having earned any interest in the project.
Kelly, what kind of work had they done to spend the $3.5 million?
So they did a beautiful VTEM helicopter survey across the entirety of the project. They did some IP geophysics, they did some downhole EM, and they drilled a few thousand meters of drilling. Like I mentioned, looking for a La Ronde type VMS. So a massive, call it 20, 30, 40 million ton VMS system. And they were unsuccessful in doing so, but they did great work, provided great geophysical data. And we got all that information back in June, and we hired a firm out of Quebec called InnovoXLO. And they did a really good job of compiling all that information in 3 dimensions and identified a number of different drilling targets for us. We embarked on a drilling campaign in November and December of 2017. And on our 3rd hole in that program, we intercepted the discovery hole into the Eastern Gold Zone. We then waited about a year to get back on the ground and get the drills spinning. So we launched the basically current exploration program at the end of November of 2018. And that's really when the Eastern Gold Zone share price really started to appreciate.
That's when I came in and they and made, I think it was early in your drilling in November, when I made them a pick, you guys were at about 50 cents. So you're a year or so later, you're up 100% from then. And you've continued to drill, and but things have sort of changed since then, from looking for a VMS deposit to these high-grade veins. So why don't you give us a little color on what you've hit in this Eastern Gold Zone, the high-grade zone, and that sort of stuff?
Sure. So the Eastern Gold Zone, when we first drilled it, it was actually a big IP anomaly. It was associated with the Denise Zone, or what we previously called the low-grade zone. That's a big, wide zone, about 100 meters wide, of disseminated sulfides with disseminated gold and really good ceres and some clay alteration. So it was a beautiful, beautiful geophysical anomaly. And as we were drilling into that big IP anomaly, we actually drilled through the high-grade zone.
It sits right beside that low-grade zone, right, Kelly?
Absolutely. So it's a parallel structure, spaced about 100 meters away from the low-grade zone. It's comprised of two quartz veins with usually abundant visible gold, sphalerite, and some pyrite. And it's pretty simple vein-hosted gold mineralization, but we've hit some very, very high-grade hits, as evident in our press releases over the past year.
Well, that's even true of your low grade zone, because what caught my attention in that low grade stuff was right at the contact of the vein and the country rock there. That's where you're getting some high grade even in the low grade zone, correct?
So our deepest hole that we've drilled in the low grade zone returned, I think it was 6.9 grams over 32.x meters, with a high grade core, just like you're mentioning, right at the footwall of that, of about 39 grams over 4.9 meters or so. So it seems like as we're drilling down to depth on that lower grade zone, that we're seeing an increase in grade.
That's something that got me really excited as well about the project, Kelly. When we talked at the PDAC, when I was looking at the two parallel veins, it looked like they actually have the potential of coming together at depth, and you could have a much bigger plumbing system. Instead of like two arms, it's two arms coming off a body sort of idea.
It's been a hypothesis of ours is to see, as we keep going down to depth, if those two systems join together. It could be really interesting. But even as standalone parallel structures, really intriguing. The high grade zone plus this lower grade zone becoming richer at depth, and we're really excited about continuing to drill that system down a few hundred more meters.
Yeah, because that's the nature of these kind of vein systems in the old rocks there. They tend to go very deep. Is correct, Kelly?
Yeah, oftentimes in the Abitibi, there's usually a pretty significant vertical extension on these systems. There's a rule of thumb. I think it's for every meter of strike length you have, it's oftentimes 7 to x times greater depth extension. But again, you never know until you start sticking drill holes down that deep. But usually the Abitibi is known for pretty significant depth extension on these different zones.
And now you're also I think you also drilled what looks like another vein in between those two. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's I think we call that Denise 1, and it's lower grade mineralization, but it's really encouraging having it right in between the two. What we also did was we did a 600 meter step out on strike. We announced that about a month or so ago, right before we announced our $8 million bought deal financing. And that hole was really interesting because we hit visible gold 600 meters along strike, indicating to us that the system continues to the east. And whether or not it's the same vein or the same zone, it's really encouraging that we're still seeing that structure extending along strike.
Well, especially if you put it into the context of what you said earlier about the 7 to X times strike is what you can get in depth.
And then the other thing that is really intriguing for us is the additional zones we've been working on, which is the Gratienne zone and the Grey Cat zone. Both of those are showing a lot of promise. Both have hit very high grade gold, and we're really looking forward to testing those this coming winter, and continuing to define those zones and hopefully build them up into economic resources.
Now, all of these zones are contained inside a package of rocks that you can see in the geophysics. What sort of dimensions are you looking there? And let's call it the prospective rocks.
We're looking at a pretty significant volume. We're actually in the middle of a drone magnetic survey, which has been, at least on a preliminary basis from the data we've seen, is going to be fantastic in helping to identify structures within that package. But overall, we've tested about 3 kilometers of strike from the end of the Gretienne across to the end of the Eastern Gold Zone, or at least the end insofar as we've drilled. The southernmost break is about 7 kilometers long in terms of overall strike length, where the thrust fault meets the rhyolite and the andesite. And then to the north, there's also another thrust fault that bounds that rhyolite package. And that fault is about 8.4 kilometers from tip to tip. So there's a whole lot of strike length to test along
Like
these
15,
faults.
is my math wrong? Like 15 kilometers or something like that?
Your math is bang on, Allan. It's about 15 kilometers of strike of prospective ground. And then in between those two faults, we think there's the potential for hosting mineralization essentially in that entirety of that triangular wedge.
And there's the veins are coming up into that rock, and you've only touched maybe what, 10 or 15% of the overall package?
Yeah, I would say 20% maybe maximum. And that was largely due to access roads that were built in the past for logging. And we haven't really tested much further. But this winter, we're allocating 20,000 meters of diamond drilling to testing these sort of untested strike extents along these major faults. That is possible due to the large financing we just recently announced.
Inside that package of rock, Kelly, what's sort of giving you the way to vector in to tag these zones that you're tagging?
So our gold recipe that we've been working on and kind of refined over the last
Oh, I
year.
like that. Gold recipe. That's a heck of a term there, Kelly.
I like it a lot too. The recipe for us is we like to see cross structures. So I mentioned we have these two major thrust faults, the Normatal and the Perron fault. And these roughly run east-west. What we like to see are east-northeast trending, we call them third-order structures, that intersect both of those faults. So we like them to be substantial enough to have a relatively deep plumbing system. So those are where we're finding most of our mineralization. And then to vector in further, we like proximity to high magnetic mafic to ultramafic intrusions.
Yeah.
We like mag lows in association with these third order structures that we think indicate alteration of the primary wall rock minerals. And we like to see a weak or subtle geophysical response either from airborne EM or from ground IP that's been done.
And so you have this recipe, and that's how you found the zones that you know so far. How many additional targets fall into this recipe?
So on our presentation that's up on our website, I think it's the last or second last page, we've got a really cool targeting slide. And that shows, I believe, 6 or 7 additional targets that we consider priority 1 that have never seen a drill hole, that share all these key criteria and are all being currently covered with our drone magnetic survey. Once that's completed, we're bringing our 3rd drill rig onto site by around the 5th of January, and that's when we'll start testing these additional targets.
Well, it really sounds wide open there for you guys, Kelly. And I think that part of the reason why some of those targets haven't been ever looked at is because some of these veins are kind of blind, aren't they? They don't come right to surface. Is that correct?
Yeah, there's a thin layer of overburden basically covering the entirety of the property. So prospecting, good old-fashioned prospecting doesn't really work here.
Yeah.
The other reason that a lot of this stuff hasn't really been looked at is that this was often thought to be a base metal project. Because of the proximity to our neighboring mine, which is the Normatal mine, a lot of the exploration work that was done here in the past has been focused on looking for additional VMS deposits. We've had explorers like Teck has been in this project, Falcon Bridge, BHP, Shell Minerals, all these old base metal explorers. What they would do in the past is fly an airborne EM survey, follow up with a ground EM survey, and drill the biggest and strongest conductors. And that's really, it works very well for exploring for base metals. But gold is a much more subtle.
Yeah, because you're looking for veins there instead of some big ore body. You're looking for the smaller high grade veins, correct?
Absolutely. And they're usually a lot more difficult to find, more of a needle in the haystack than something that really pops and stands out to you.
But now you guys have unlocked the mystery of it all, of how to get your gold recipe. So you guys are having a lot of success finding and following the known zones and all, and looking for new ones.
Absolutely. We've had a really good year. Our technical team on the ground up north is really fantastic. And they've come up with a bunch of really wonderful ideas for vectoring. And I'm really looking forward to the January exploration program on the regional front.
Now, let's talk about, that sort of gets us to where we are now, Kelly. Why don't you tell us a little bit about your team? You've got some rock stars on your team, don't you, Kelly?
Yeah, we've got an awesome management team. So the president of the company is Victor Cantore, who you've met in the past. Victor is a capital markets guy. He's financed a number of different exploration companies over the past 20 or so years. He was the vendor of the Nemaska Lithium project into Nemaska Lithium back in 2007, and has helped a number of different junior companies sort of build and finance and continue to explore. And our chairman is Jacques Trottier. He's a PhD in economic geology, and he was the founder of a company called Sullivan Exploration, who was bought out in 2014, I believe, for $600 million.
Wow.
And he built that from a conceptual idea to greater than 3 million ounces of gold. And that's currently being mined by Pan American Silver at the moment down in Peru.
Wow. That's a strong team, a strong project, and something else that really stands out for you guys is that you're in Quebec, which is one of the best jurisdictions in the world for exploration and mine development, and then you've got infrastructure all around you, right? There's roads and everything right there.
So Quebec has been a really great place to explore. I've done a lot of my exploration in Ontario and the Yukon, both of which are very good places to explore as well. But Quebec has the benefit of the government significant financial incentives. So in 2019, most of our work has been done using hard dollar financings, and we will receive about 30-ish% of all the money that we spent in the ground back from the government as a tax incentive. Wow. And then in 2020, we did this flow-through financing, the most recently announced one, and we've received a significant premium on the flow-through, again, because of the Quebec mining incentives. So it's an awesome place to explore. They're very pro-mining here.
Yeah.
And we, like you mentioned, we do have really great infrastructure. You can drive right to our core shack. It's about a 6-hour drive from Toronto. We've got power on site, cell phone service on site, access to water. It's a really great place to be exploring for gold.
Well, it's one of my favorite places. I've only ever followed a few companies out there. One of them in my report was Virginia Gold with Andre Gourmand and Osisko. I've started following Osisko when they were first hitting it at Malartic. Their earliest holes, I think the stock was around $1 or something like that. And now you guys, so I think in my eyes, you guys are in some pretty heady company there, Kelly.
I'm happy to be at the same table as those guys, believe me.
Yeah, you can say that again. Well, Kelly, I think you've touched on everything up till, let's take one last look going forward.
Sure. So we have 2 drills actively spinning on the project right now. focused on expansion and definition of the Eastern Gold Zone, the Gratienne Gold Zone, and the Grey Cat Zone. And in January of 2020, we'll bring our third drill rig on site. People can look forward to continued news flow. We've got a pretty good track record of putting news out every 3 to 4 weeks, and we expect to be able to continue doing so, possibly even at a bit of an increased pace now that we'll have our third drill on site. That's kind of the game plan for the time being, is continued exploration and definition of our known zones. And like I mentioned a few times, we're really looking forward to our regional exploration program testing the remainder of those 15 kilometers of prospective faults.
And you just, how's the treasury looking so that people can get a sense of, how well you're looked after going forward to crank those drills all year through 2020?
Sure. So we announced an increase once we announced the close of our financing. We announced an increase of our drill program from 40,000 to 100,000 meters. So that'll be about 60,000 meters drilled in 2020, fully financed. We've got a little over $10 million in the bank at the moment, and we have a tax receivable from the Quebec government of roughly $2 million as well. So we're in a very, very healthy financial position, cashed up, ready to rock.
Lots of drilling, lots of news, and Eric Sprott participated recently. I think, right?
He participated in the two most recent financings. So there was a $5.4 million financing in March, and this current, I think it's $8.9 million, which should be finalized shortly.
Well, he's got a pretty good nose for gold. You guys got a pretty good nose for gold. You got lots of money to drill. I recommend that anybody that's interested in exploration for gold, especially high-grade gold in a well-known district in Quebec, Amex is a company you want to know about. Amex is their symbol. Go check them out. Look at the website. Call them up. These guys are really good at telling their story. Kelly, thanks a lot for coming on and doing this show for us. You've been generous with your time.
Well, thanks a lot, guys. And you didn't grill me too hard, so I'm having a good day here.
Kelly, the story really tells itself. There's not a lot of these types around, and I think you guys are doing great work, and I think you've got a great future ahead of you.
Right on. Thanks a lot, Allan.